Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, I had a voice for radio. So today, I am sharing with you some very exciting news about the Pokemon 2018 World Championship decks, which are being printed and released as pre-built decks. Huge shout out to the lovely Immunity, the lovely Matthew Arrive over on Twitter, who has shared this information. This happens every year. What we get is 4 of the decks that performed well at the World Championships, and they are printed as pre-made decks, so you can buy them and play with them. Good news is you get the World Championships pin badge with it. Yay! Bad news is, and this needs to be stressed, you cannot play with these cards in tournaments. They are signed, they feature signatures of the players, and also they've got a different border, etc. They are not legal for tournament play. But if you want to get some practice in with some different decks, or you want to teach somebody how to play with proper Worlds winning decks, this is the way to do it. And as a side note, a lot of my friends have recently started collecting the older World Championship decks because it lets them play in old formats without having to muck around trying to get all of the old cards. So if you're interested in old formats, pick them up now so you've got them ready for later. So what we're going to do very quickly is have a quick run through all of these 4 decks, and I'll show you the exact deck list because they've all been published on Pokemon.com. I have done videos about most of these decks, so what I will do, if I have done a video really deep diving into the deck, I'll pop a link in the description. So first of all, the one we should have been expecting, of course, the lovely Robin Schultz's deck has been printed. It is Zoroark Garbodor. Although he has given it a name, you do get to name your own deck, and he's called it Victory Map, which is a play on the card Town Map. Robin is somewhat famous in the Pokemon community for always playing Town Map in every single deck he ever plays, so I do love that he's gotten Victory Map in there. And this deck really revolves, shockingly enough, around Zoroark and Garbodor. You've got Zoroark there with Riotous Beating for a double colorless energy. It does 20 damage for each Pokemon you've got on the field. And then you've got Trade, discard a card from your hand and draw 2. Really does give you a super consistent deck. We then have the ability locking Garbodor that turns off your opponent's abilities, limiting their options for running their deck. And as we'll see as we look at some of the others, there's a few abilities running around. And the Garbodor from Guardians Rising that for a single energy does 20 damage for each item in your opponent's discard pile. The cool thing about this is your opponent has no abilities. But if they play lots of items, which you'll often do to get around having no abilities, you can punish them with Garbodor. And you're just sitting there the whole time hitting with Zoroark, although there's no healing here. No Ace Roller or Max Potion as we see in a bunch of decks that do play Zoroark. The only other weird thing here is a copy of Kartana, which is just really fun for discarding your opponent's special energy, as well as having a GX attack that just takes a prize. And he can use a unit energy here to make sure that he can actually get away with playing Psychic or Metal energy without having to take the damage counter he would if he was playing Rainbow energy. We also see here a top 4 list. Pedro Torrrez's Rayquaza has been printed instead of Jeff Kalenk's runner-up Malamar Marshadow deck. They generally tend to print the 3 world champions, although if there's overlap they don't. And then it's kind of the 4th deck is whatever is interesting. This is apparently what's interesting. Now, this deck has been named by Pedro, of course, and he has called it Dragones y Sombras, which seems to mean like dragons and shadows. And that makes sense, because it's all built around Rayquaza GX and Marshadow. And the theory of this deck is incredibly simple. You play the fastest possible list of Rayquaza you can. It doesn't even play Baby Daisy's Spirit Pokemon of Latias Prism Star, because that's a little bit too slow, which makes me sad. You're trying to use Dragon Break to smash as hard as you can, as fast as you can, so what you do is you play Marshadow, which makes your opponent shuffle their deck and take a new hand of 4 cards. in theory slowing them down, giving you time to smash. Now it does play a Xurkitree GX, which has immunity to Pokemon with special energy attached, and a GX attack that gives you an extra prize, so that's kind of fun. But generally you're using cards like Max Elixir to accelerate energy and Acro Bike to go through your deck very, very fast, and it's built around I am going to get the fastest possible smashing. It is a full bore, I am going to run as fast as I can through you and cross my fingers. Yes, if you're against something like a Garbodor, it's terrifying, but Marshadow basically goes, maybe I'll disrupt you enough so I'll survive long enough to win the game. We also see the senior winning deck being printed. This is Magnus Patterson's Garbodor Bayonet deck, although of course he has named it, and he's named it Garbonet. I quite like that. Just putting Garbodor and Bayonet together. Now we have Garbodor here, which of course we have seen, because we talked about it with Robin's deck, and I suppose something to bear in mind here, Garbodor really did a number at the World Championships here. And again, we've got the same two Garbodor. But we add in here Bayonet GX. Now, Bayonet GX does a couple of things. Firstly, it hits weakness on Buzzwole, which as we've seen is, well, we're going to see a little bit more in a moment. Buzzwole is a very, very good deck. And also, it's got a GX attack that recovers cards from your discard pile, and an ability that lets you move a damage counter from one Pokemon to another Pokemon. And this is one of those decks that takes advantage of Shrine of Punishment. Weirdly enough, it doesn't play Shrine of Punishment. Shrine of Punishment puts one damage counter on each Pokemon EX and GX between turns. This doesn't even play Shrine of Punishment. But what it does do is if your opponent plays it, you take a damage counter at the end of their turn. You then get rid of it using something like your Parallel City or a Field Blower. And then you get to move the damage counter that you took onto one of your opponent's Pokemon. Basically, it punishes them for dropping their own Shrine of Punishment here. And then we see a bunch of really weird cards. There's a promo Jirachi to get rid of special energy, while then also getting immunity for a turn. We see a copy of Drampa, which also gets rid of special energy, but does have an attack that does 150 for free energy if you've got a damaged bench Pokemon. We also see a copy of Wobbuffet here. Wobbuffet! Which just does a bunch of extra damage if your opponent's got damage counters on. Oh yeah, it also blocks abilities when it's in the active. Non-psychic abilities, that's pretty big. And then we see one copy of non-GX Buzzwole, a single copy, and because he's playing a single copy, he's playing Rainbow Energy in order to be able to use it. Now do obviously remember, if you play Rainbow Energy, you can then move the damage counter over with Bayonet, so technically it's not just for Buzzwole, but I love that he's playing one non-psychic Pokemon, and he's playing 4 Rainbow Energy just to be able to use it. And then finally we see the Juniors winning deck. Like I say, they do tend to use the free champions if possible, and that's Naohito Inoue, who won with Buzzwole Lycanroc. A big smashy deck we've all probably seen a few times before. You've got the aforementioned Buzzwole Sledgehammer, 30 damage, but if your opponent's got 4 prizes remaining, 120 for a single energy. You've then got Buzzwole GX, 30 to the active, 30 to one on the bench for 1 energy, 160 for free. Then, of course, you've got Beast Ring, which allows you to accelerate 2 energy to an Ultra Beast if your opponent has 3 or 4 prizes remaining. And Diancie, which lets you do an extra 20 damage with your fighting Pokemon. That all seems pretty good and consistent. The other big part of this deck is Lycanroc. It's a decent attacker. It's got a very good GX attack that does 50 damage for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, but really here it's for the ability, which is a gusting effect. It's like a Guzma. You get to drag one of your opponent's Pokemon into the active, hopefully 2KO them. Although this deck also takes advantages of cards like Beast Energy to do an extra 30 damage on the Ultra Beast, and Brooklet Hill to search out those fighting Pokemon, the basics. Oh yeah, and I should mention it also plays Octillery, just do a little bit of draw power, and one of my favourite inclusions in any deck this entire World Championships the Regirock from Celestial Storm. Because this deck was around before Strong Energy got rotated out. So Regirock for a single energy did 20 damage. But 40 if it had a Pokemon tool, and if that Pokemon tool was choice banned and everyone was playing it, it often would be, then you're actually up to 70. And then if the energy's a strong energy, then you're up to 90. And then if you've got a Diancie Prism Star, you're up to 110 for a single energy. That's a one-hit KO on Zoroark for a single energy. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a lot of fun. And they are the 4 World Championship decks that are being reprinted. If you've got friends that are learning the game, these are great. If you want to try out new decks, these are great. If you want to just put them aside and come back to them in 10 years to try and remember what the format was like in August of 2018, they are great. Seriously, a lot of people are running around trying to find the decks from like 2004 at the moment. It's not that easy. I would get them sooner rather than later. Alrighty then. Thank you to the lovely community for sharing this news. And for now, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to hear from you guys. Tell me what you think about this particular decks. Do you think they made the right choices? And which one is your favourite? Go nuts. But please do remember the rule. Be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio. That's also where bonus podcasts live. And do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WasiPlays. We're currently doing a deep dive into Transformers TCG, but we're also going to start heading into Keyforge very soon. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.